Good afternoon. My name is Eileen Kao, and I am the chief of the Waste Reduction and Recycling section that is part of our Recycling and Resource Management Division here in Montgomery County's Department of Environmental Protection. Thank you very, very much for joining us this afternoon and taking time out of your busy schedule for what we believe is a very enlightening program this afternoon, and hopefully it will shed more light on multifamily waste reduction and recycling here in Montgomery County. So here in Montgomery County, hopefully most of you realize we really recycle. In Montgomery County, we started our waste reduction and recycling programs in the 1970s. And ever since then, we have just continuously grown and expanded our program to enable everyone in Montgomery County to reduce their waste more and to recycle more different types of materials and in greater quantities. So here in the county, David, if you could go back for a second. So the county is made up of approximately 730 multifamily properties. That's a combination of apartment properties and condominium properties. And altogether, those properties have about 140,000 dwelling units. We also have approximately 220,000 single-family households in Montgomery County, including townhomes. And we have approximately 33,000 businesses, organizations, and government facilities located in the county that together have over 440,000 employees working with those organizations. So all told, we've got more than 1.5 million people living and working here in Montgomery County. And we really need every single person to recycle and to recycle as much as possible. Next, please. We have a formal recycling goal here in Montgomery County, and hopefully this is not new news to you. We have a very, very ambitious goal, and that is to reduce waste and recycle more, aiming for zero waste. So we are doing very, very well in Montgomery County. We continue to recycle more materials, more of those materials. And here, as you can see in this graph, we continue our trend of increasing recycling, but also our recycling rate, which is the amount of materials that we recycle divided by the total amount of waste, goes up year by year, as does our waste diversion rate. And what our waste diversion rate is, it is our recycling rate, but it also factors in our waste reduction initiatives. So we're doing very, very well. And actually, per the Maryland Recycling Act, all of the counties plus the city of Baltimore in the state of Maryland are required to report on an annual basis their recycling rate and waste diversion rate to Maryland Department of the Environment, who then reviews what we submit and sanctions it or approves it. And we are stacking up very, very well. We are actually number one in the state in the year 2020 with both our recycling rate and our waste diversion rate. So that is something we're extremely proud of. But we also want to acknowledge and congratulate everyone living and working in the county, because that really is based on everybody living and working in the county pulling forward and reducing their waste and recycling as much as possible. So let's take a closer look at where our waste in Montgomery County comes from. So approximately 48% of all the waste that's generated in the county comes from the commercial sector. the businesses, the organizations, the nonprofit groups, the government facilities. And the remainder of the waste generated comes from the residential sector. And as you can see from this pie chart, the multifamily sector, the apartments and condos, they've got the smallest slice of the waste pie, generating about 6%, less than 6% of the overall waste that's created here in Montgomery County. Next, please. So looking at each sector and how well each sector is doing in terms of their recycling, we have the commercial sector in the lead, and they are recycling an astonishing amount of the waste that they generate. Then we've got our single family homes and townhomes. And then we have the multifamily sector. And the multifamily sector is recycling over 28% of the waste that they create, which is, it's good progress. And luckily we're seeing the amount recycled in the multifamily sector growing year by year, but we really need your help. And we're very, very happy that you're here today joining us at this webinar, because we really want to impart a lot of good information to you so that hopefully you will take away that information and be able to boost recycling at each of your properties. So what's our next greatest opportunity in terms of recycling? Well, we're kind of funny. We literally dive into the waste stream and dissect the details of what is in our waste stream. And what we've done is we do these periodic waste composition studies. We go through and take samplings of the trash, and we actually sort through into different material types. So we know that the material that is found in the next greatest quantity in our trash disposed is food scraps. Some refer to food scraps as food waste. We choose not to. We always refer to this material as food scraps, because to us, it isn't a waste. It's not a waste. It's a wonderful material that really we can separate for recycling, and we can create a new useful life for it. So we take a lot of, a lot of close look at food scraps. And the reason for that is, again, we think that it's our next frontier material. It gives us the greatest next opportunity to increase our recycling here in Montgomery County. So in the year 2017, we worked with hundreds of stakeholders, and we worked together to develop our strategic plan to advance composting, compost use, and food scraps diversion in Montgomery County. I see that we do have a hand up, and I am going to ask that we hold questions to the end of my segment, and then I'll be able to quickly answer some questions that you may have. So in our strategic plan, we really focused on 6 distinct areas: reducing wasted food and channeling edible food that can still be consumed by people, channeling that edible food to others that still have unmet needs. We also focus on in-home, backyard, and community composting of food scraps. We are right now testing, with the help of 1,000 resident volunteers in the county. We're actually testing 2 models of rodent-proof compost bins, so that hopefully residents will be able to compost in their backyards, grass, leaves, garden trimmings, which make up yard trim, but also food scraps in their backyard compost bins. That's going very well, and we're getting a lot of great feedback and data and information from our resident volunteers, which is really critical to our study. We also have a segment of this strategic plan that is focused on on-site commercial, on-site business composting. Many of our businesses and organizations are located on campus type settings. And so we're working with them to see whether or not they can actually manage at the source both their yard trim as well as their food scraps and create compost processes on site to create a really nice, rich soil amendment that they can then use again on their properties. One of our focus areas is on-farm composting. For probably since the beginning of time, many farmers in the process of growing their crops, they will compost their own food scraps on site. But there are some farmers that would also like to go beyond that and be able to begin to accept food scraps from other sources that they can then process on their farms and create compost. Another important area of focus in our strategic plan is trying to develop and expand composting capacity in facilities for the food scraps that are generated here in Montgomery County. And of course, one of our major focuses is trying to increase and look at curbside collection of food scraps from our single-family homes, which now we have a phase 1 of our pilot that we've been running to provide curbside collection to single-family homes and recycle their food scraps. And we've had for about a year, a little over a year, our phase 1 running. We are capturing a lot of data and information from that. And we are about to launch phase 2 of our pilot for single family homes. And all of this, all of the experience and information we gain from the pilot, we are going to be using all of that to inform and assist in our planning for taking curbside collection of food scraps for recycling broader to all of our single family homes countywide eventually. So we really want to work together to increase recycling here in Montgomery County. Multifamily properties. We hope that you will consider starting up food scraps recycling programs for your residents at your properties. And you're going to learn more about that. But also, we are always here. As always, we are here as a resource to help you as you do this. Next. So let's work concertedly together to achieve our waste reduction and recycling goals. We're really asking for your help. Help us, please, to reduce the amount of waste to the maximum extent possible. Help us by offering up opportunities to your residents and encouraging them to pursue reuse opportunities, including a brand new program. You're among the first to hear about this because we did a soft launch just within the last 10 days, a special program to accept reusable, durable medical equipment for reuse. That is a drop-off at this point, and it's really focused on all kinds of durable medical equipment items, including wheelchairs, crutches, walkers, canes, medical beds, hospital beds, Hoyer lifts, and many more items. Monitor your recycling programs on site. Pay attention to your recycling programs. You've set them up and, it's kind of like throwing a party or an event. Then you've gone to that extent to set it up. You want people to participate. You want people to take advantage of your recycling programs and to recycle as much as possible. So take a look at your recycling containers and see whether or not people are recycling, filling them up. See whether there are contaminants that should not be in the recycling bins? And conversely, take a look at your trash dumpsters. Are there recyclables that should have gone into the recycling containers appearing in your trash? Take that information and roll it into your efforts to educate all of your staff on site and all of your residents. Report to us your recycling activities and your recycling progress. It is, of course, a requirement on an annual basis that you report your recycling progress to us, but at any point, we really want to know what is happening at your property. And so at any point, if you notice anything going awry or have questions about your recycling progress, reach out to us. We are here to help. And most of all, always keep in mind our goal: aim for zero waste. Thanks. So we have a great program planned for you. I'm going to now introduce Alan Poltonevich. Alan is our recycling coordinator here in Montgomery County. He is in my section and has been on the team since the year 2000. So Alan, take it away.
Thank you, Eileen, and hello, everyone. We're going to continue with today's webinar. So Dave, if we can pull up the slides. I just want to continue what Eileen had mentioned regarding our goal to reduce waste, recycle more, aiming for zero waste. And this is how we're going to continue to work towards achieving that goal. So the next slide, just a reminder to everyone, for apartments and condominiums, our definition are those properties that have 7 or more dwelling units. That's what we consider an apartment or condominium under our multifamily waste reduction recycling program, the TRACK program. And per our executive regulation 1-15, all apartments and condominiums, as well as anyone living in Montgomery County in a single family home, and everyone working in Montgomery County in businesses, organizations, local, state, federal government facilities, as long as you're in Montgomery County, these are the materials that must be recycled. It includes mixed paper and cardboard, what we call commingled materials, your glass, plastic, aluminum, cans, jars, bottles, flower pots, containers, scrap metal, yard trim, and Christmas trees. And over the years, we've been providing tons of information on the mandatory recyclable materials. And all that information is available on our website through our different resources. Our multifamily waste reduction recycling program has a lot of education materials that we make available to the property managers, property owners, green team committee members, to get the information to the residents of the properties about what is required to be recycled, whether it be posters, brochures, container labels. We have all the education materials we'll provide to those properties, so that way your residents know exactly what materials must be recycled and where those materials can go in those containers. So we can go into those details later on, and also you can ask our multifamily recycling program, our staff members you'll be introduced to a little bit later today, about specifics regarding the mandatory materials. In addition to the mandatory materials, the materials that must be recycled, we do encourage apartments and condominiums to recycle other materials that there are viable markets for to get recycled. And you'll see here on the screen a list of those materials. And you already heard Eileen mention the food scraps. So, that's one area opportunity to look at your waste streams to see if there's an opportunity to provide food scrap recycling programs for your staff and residents. There are a number of multifamily properties that have already implemented food scrap recycling programs. And that's a whole nother seminar, webinar we can go about details on the food scraps. But our multifamily recycling program manager, Ruth, who you'll meet later on, she will be able to help you implement those programs. We have some exciting initiatives on our multifamily side to work with multifamily properties that implement food scrap programs if they're not already doing so. Plastic bags and plastic film, you probably know much about. We ask that those bags and film do not end up in your recycling bins, because the plastic bags and film are contaminants in most recycling programs. Those plastic bags can get entangled in the processing equipment. So your contractors that are providing your recycling collection service, if materials come directly to our facility at the Montgomery County Shady Grove Transfer Station Processing Facility and Recycling Center, we're not able to accept those plastic bags for recycling. It gets entangled within the equipment. However, there are take-back programs for plastic bags, plastic film, shrink wrap, bread bags, plastic packaging materials at most grocery stores in Montgomery County, as well as some retailers. So we can provide information to get to your residents and how they can recycle plastic bags and film, just not in the bins that you provide, because that would be a contaminant in the commingle program, but for residents to be able to take them back to the stores. And then for other materials like electronics, computers, televisions, printing cartridges, all those type of materials. Batteries. Here in Montgomery County, you've received information from us. Batteries are a problem. If batteries are improperly disposed, either in the recycling bin or in the trash container, those batteries can result in trash fires. And we want to reduce the risk for trash fires. So we ask everyone, please do not put any type of batteries into any recycling or trash containers, to instead get those materials collected and managed in a different way. For residents to come to our facilities, we have our household hazardous waste drop-off area in Durwood, where residents can bring their batteries for recycling and proper disposal. There are some retailers that will take back batteries for recycling, or properties can implement these type of programs for the residents to get these batteries out of the recycling and trash containers. So we want to reduce the risk for trash fires, so we can work with you to implement these type of programs. And so all these other voluntary materials, we have a lot of resources, a lot of information to help your properties implement these type of programs to maximize the amount of materials that your residents are able to recycle. In addition to the recycling, there are ways we can reduce the amount of waste that we generate. That's our hierarchy in the county, to reduce what's generated, so that way we don't have to figure out, does it go into the recycling container or should that go into the trash can? If you don't generate it at the source, you don't need to worry about what happens to that material. So here in Montgomery County, you may be familiar that back in 2015, we passed a ban on polystyrene food serviceware. And in fact, that ban continues today, and we clarified the requirements of that original ban in 2020. So our current Council Bill 33-20, what we call Switch from 6, prohibits the use and sale of number 6 polystyrene food serviceware in Montgomery County. And it further requires any food service business to use either reusable, recyclable, or compostable food serviceware. So we have a lot of information available on our website. We have posters, we have brochures, and we have a dedicated resource list for properties that are serving food, to serve that food on compostable or reusable or recyclable food serviceware packaging. And we have a list of vendors that you can obtain those materials from. We have over 4,000 listings on our resource list. So it's a great resource that we have. And if you have any questions about the requirements, again, our team will be able to help you with those requirements. The next requirement are our straw requirements, also passed in late 2020, which is our Skip the Straw campaign. So if you can go to the next slide. So if you go to a restaurant, a food service business in Montgomery County, those businesses should no longer be providing customers with a straw unless that customer specifically requests a straw to meet disability requirements. So for example, if you go to a restaurant, you should just be able to get your cup with no straw. And if you do ask for a straw, the straws provided must either be reusable, home compostable, or marine degradable. Restaurants are able to maintain a small supply of plastic straws to provide to customers upon request to meet medical needs. Again, we have brochures, we have stickers, we have labels, we have lots of information regarding our straw requirements. And if you have any questions about that, also please feel free to let us know. And then in addition to what the county is doing, as property owners, property managers, green team members, interested residents, look at what you can do as individuals and what you can promote to your residents to further reduce waste. So these are individual actions that each and every one of us can take that can reduce waste at the source. So looking at what we're buying, what we're generating. So instead of buying disposable food serviceware, look for reusable food serviceware, whether it be coffee mugs or water bottles, utensils, dishes, napkins, reusable things that can be washed again and reused again, instead of buying disposable items that may end up in the trash. Provided this information to your residents, whether you have portals, email, a common area where you can post this information. Again, these are just everyday tips. If we just continue to provide that information to residents, over time, they'll get that information and be able to implement these type of individual initiatives that we can take that really do add up. As Eileen mentioned, we have over 1 million residents in the county. So each and every person does this, we will make a tremendous impact. And then also providing opportunities for residents to either reuse materials or donate those materials. Eileen had mentioned our new durable medical equipment reuse program. So look to see if there's a way to provide that program to your residents. And again, we can work with you in your properties to try to work on developing these type of programs and providing education to your residents. And to continue to make recycling work, we got to create the demand for those materials that we are recycling here in Montgomery County. So to buy those products that are made from those recycled materials. And there are thousands of materials out there made from the materials that we are recycling in the county. Paper made from recycled paper, clothing made from recycled plastic bottles, building materials, park benches, picnic tables made from those plastic bags I talked about earlier. So there are things that are being recycled and being made into new products. And to keep that recycling loop working, you want to buy those materials. So you want to look for that symbol. You see the 3 chasing arrows within a dark circle. That symbol lets you know that product is made from recycled packaging or recycled materials. And you want to look for the highest percentage of post-consumer recycled content material as possible. That post-consumer recycled content are the materials that we purchase, that we buy, that we use, and then that we put into the recycle bins that are then collected and recycled into new products. So look for the highest percentage of post-consumer recycled content as possible. And again, in summary, anything that you can do to help provide information to your residents to make it as easy for them to recycle, that it's not an extra step for them. Something as simple as making sure your recycling and trash container, your collection areas are clean, that there's nothing blocking access to those containers, because if residents cannot get to those containers because they're blocked, they're not going to be able to recycle. If those containers are full because you don't have adequate recycling capacity and collection service, where are they going to put that recyclable materials that they diligently recycle inside if those outdoor containers are full? So things to keep in mind as you walk your properties, as you're working with your staff, as you're working with your green team, to make sure that you have adequate capacity for recycling. Make sure those container labels, postage, signage is clear, it's up to date. Programs change over time. We have some really old posters out there. We're constantly updating our posters, reprinting brand new posters, and we want to make sure you have that information. So if you need any of those education materials, let Ruth and her team know, and we'll can provide that to you so that way your residents know exactly what can be recycled at your properties. And provide these reminders to your residents, whether it be through email, newsletters, community events. You can let us know. We're happy to come to your communities, participate in events, whether it be pool parties or other events at your properties, so we can continue to get that information out to your residents. And again, as Eileen said, we are here to help, and we want to continue working with you. Thank you for taking time for being with us today. We're going to continue today's webinar. I'd like to introduce Jessica Panicola. Jessica joined the recycling and waste reduction section just this past May, so we're happy to have Jessica on board. She is one of our waste reduction recycling specialists for the multifamily program. If you haven't met her, you will meet her, because she is working with your properties, visiting properties all across the county to improve your waste reduction and recycling efforts. Before I turn it over to Jessica, just to remind everyone, if you do have any questions, please use the chat feature. At the end of today's webinar, we'll be going over those questions and providing answer those questions today. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Jessica.
Great, thank you, Alan. And good afternoon, everybody. It's so lovely to see how many of you have joined us today. So my name is Jessica, and we are going to be having a panel discussion today with some individuals in Montgomery County who have successfully started green teams at their property. Before we jump into that, I'd like to just take a step back. Let's talk about what a green team is and just how we're defining that. Painted with a pretty broad stroke, a green team is a group of individuals engaged in advancing sustainable practices. And this, could be in relation to recycling, energy use, something like a community garden. It all really revolves around what that green team has identified as a need at their property. And let's talk about some benefits of green teams. So one thing that we see is that properties that do have active green teams there tend to have higher recycling rates. They give residents the opportunity to get involved in initiatives that they feel passionate about and also suggest these things. And because of that, individuals at these properties that are, the residents that are involved in it have a greater sense of ownership and responsibility over it. And ultimately that builds, a really strong community. So now with that said, I love to introduce each of our panelists to you, starting with Karen Green, who is a resident at the Kenwood House Cooperative. And she has been the Green Committee chairperson since 2019. The Green Committee began in 2011 and it has 7 members, which is 10% of the units represented at that property. Next up, we have Sandy Sugar, who is a resident at the Promenade Towers and the founding member of their Eco Action Club. The Eco Action Club has been running for 8 years and has 8 members. And lastly, I'd like to introduce Carolyn Wilson, who is a resident at Mika Condominiums and the founding member and secretary of the Environmental Committee. The Environmental Committee involves a garden subcommittee that oversees the running of a community garden. This committee was started in 2020 and involves 5 formal members plus residents who may join at their leisure. Thank you 3 for joining us today. And I'd love to just start, open up this discussion with maybe you can share a little bit about how you started your green team, maybe what inspired it.
Sure. Our green team started in 2011 and it really grew out of an initiative from Bethesda Green where they were bringing multifamily properties together to talk about ways the buildings could recycle. And it prompted 4 of our residents to form a green committee, which has been in existence ever since.
I'll pipe up if that's okay. My name is Sandy Sugar. I am a resident at the Promenade Co-op, which is a building of 1,000+ units. We started our team, our group, our club in 2013 as a result of conversation amongst members from another committee. And because of our commitment to green, we moved forward.
And this is Carolyn Wilson. We have the youngest committee represented here. We just started a few years ago. It was really 2 residents who felt really passionate about making a more positive impact with regard to actions in our community and the environment. And so they went to the board, got approval, got a charter approved, and stood up a committee. And we've been continuing the work. They unfortunately have both left our building, but the work has continued and the committee still stands and meets monthly.
Great, thank you all for sharing. The next question that I have for you is in regards to the goals or the things that you focus on at your properties. What is the focus of your green teams?
I'll pipe in. At the Promenade, the focus, which I'm sure is common to all of us, is simply to, or not so simply, educate the residents as to best practices for reducing our carbon footprint.
Yeah, and ours is similar. Our charter actually states encourage greener lifestyles among the residents and build a greater sense of community through identifying the key environmental issues and then launching community-wide programs. And I'll be talking more about some of the specific areas we've launched since we started in the next section.
May I add something? I'm sorry, am I interrupting?
Go ahead, Sandy.
I think one of the important pieces of our goal was to attempt realistic goals so that they were accomplishable.
Yep. And at the Kenwood House, our charter says increasing energy efficiency, reducing energy and water consumption and costs, conserving resources, and living responsibly in a world of dwindling resources. The primary objective, like Sandy said, is to provide recommendations on simple steps to save money, maintain or upgrade individual units and public spaces in ways that reduce our carbon footprint in the units and in the public space of Kenwood House.
And I'm sure in doing all of these things, you run into some challenges at some point, maybe. Could you share with us a challenge, either a big challenge or a small challenge that your green team has encountered at some point? And could you also just walk us through how you worked through or how you're currently working through that challenge?
Sure.
Start. Oh, go ahead, Sandy. Did you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I think we've had many challenges with the size of our group expanding and contracting and getting the support that we need. But a big one for us has been, interestingly, number one, the abuse of the metal bins. And number two, convincing residents that single stream trash pickup works and how it works. And too many residents see the staff throw together all the papers and the recyclables, and they just assume it doesn't make any sense to recycle if these are commingled. So convincing people, residents, that that system works has been a challenge.
Could you share a little bit maybe about how you might be working through that?
Well, at one point we tried to see if we could use another trash collection source, and that was just out of the question. It was extremely expensive. We really don't have, we answer people's questions. We really don't have a dedicated and committed and repetitious response, and that's something we need to work on.
Well, it's interesting, in our building, we do have that issue, and the residents diligently separate their paper from the rest of the commingled, and we just let them continue. In the off chance that someday the paper recycling dual stream will become financially viable.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Good to know.
So I'd like to share one minor challenge, which has become kind of a big deal, which is we have launched a composting program through a contractor, and we have had repeated incidences of inappropriate materials ending up in our composting bin. Mm-hmm. And interestingly, we had signs up on the wall behind the composting bins, and sent out emails, flyers, etc. But then just about 2 months ago, we put a great big flyer on the bin that clearly explains what can and can't. We put a QR code that says, here's a link to a more detailed list of what can and can't. And it's actually really improved the compliance with the composting. So that was, kind of encouraging. I think for us, our major challenge is going to be when the BEPS regulations come out, and after the law was passed last year in Montgomery County, we took a deep dive into that, and that because we are an old building built in the 1960s, we're actually heavily into fossil fuels. It will require a really heavy lift to electrify the building in order to be in compliance. And so we're waiting to see the regulations and the timeline for that, and going to try to work with management and the board to help them develop a long-term plan to shift in that direction. But that's a really big challenge that we're facing in the future.
Yes, and I agree, Carolyn. It's something that I've mentioned to the board, but it's something that generally there's no awareness even at this point. And that's something the county could probably help us with. With regard to food scrapping, because I know Eileen mentioned that that's the #1 priority for the county now. Some of the ways we handled the challenges were to pilot it before adoption so people could see, your food scraps, they were in the garbage before. They're just in a different bin, and it doesn't smell worse. The vermin are no more of a problem than they were before. And so the piloting and sort of a campaign of information helped a lot. The county also helped a lot by coming out, as Alan said, to speak with us along with Compost Crew, which is our vendor. And the county also helped by giving us some starter supplies along with signs. I'm not sure that program is still going, but it made a huge difference for us to be able to supply bins and bags as well as signage. So that was huge. I would say, in terms of a lesson learned, the biggest driver for people is to show how projects will save money. And food scrapping saves some money because in our building, a lot of food waste was going into the garbage disposals, and we had a lot of pipe clogs. That it's not gone, but it is notably better. So that's a great way to show it. Certainly converting to LEDs, motion sensors, solar exterior lighting, which we have done, saves us money. So whenever we can, we pitch it as money saving, because that everyone can get behind, regardless of whether they think the environment is a priority or not. That's been a little more complex with electric vehicle charging, which we also have underway. That's a whole nother discussion also. So happy to talk to communities about that.
Great. Thanks so much, Karen. And you actually just hit on a couple of points that I wanted to ask about next, which was the impact that you see from, as a result of having a green team or a green committee at your property. What has been the impact that you've seen from it?
I'll start if you don't mind. We've done a lot of programs in my building, and I apologize for reading, but I don't think I could remember them all. And I also broke this down by where we got our help from, whether it was from the board or management or residents. And from the board, we have had installed actually 10 EV stations, understanding that our building is 1,000+ units. So it's all relative. Of course, we installed LED lights in all the common areas and motion sensors as well. And we recently, not that recently, actually, a few years ago, replaced our fan coil system, which was very expensive. That has variable fan speeds and a digital thermometer. The management has helped us switch over to our source of communication, which is, I would say 95% of our communication is online, including voting by intranet. And management also posts the recycling flyers and notices from residents as to what they're selling, what household items they're selling or exchanging. And then also changing we have an indoor pool, and changing our dehumidification system to make it more energy efficient. So that was a big deal. With the residents, we also have a lovely community garden, and we have a library, which is a significant size for building, with with residents being allowed to donate or to take home books as they wish. The group itself has annually an Earth Day event, which has been very successful, April 22nd, and we do a free LED light bulb exchange, and we have Montgomery County Recycling come out and talk to us, and they bring us bags that everybody loves from the county. And we have also had great success with visiting the recycling facility in Durwood. People love that. We also visited a sustainable house that was built by students at University of Maryland. I don't know whether that's still there, but that was an eye opener. And we have shown films that in particular I can recommend, not that I know the names, but there was one on plastic waste, which was great, and which showed in particular that I remember the water wheel that is in the Chesapeake Bay, which collects plastic bags in the bay. Goodwill's recycling program is phenomenal. If you want to show another film that's very informative, and what they're doing is superb. And we've had flea markets for residents as well, where they bring their clothes or they bring their jewelry. We've had exchanges there, and that's been successful.
Thank you so much, Sandy. Just in the essence of time, I want to just move on to the next question, just because I feel like this is a very, very important one. And maybe Carolyn, you could kick this one off. Is we have a lot of property managers and residents on here who are maybe interested in starting a green team at their own property, or they might be even have started it and they're just, you know, in the beginning phase of it. If you could give them one piece of advice, what would that be?
Sure. My piece of advice is start small. And I think Karen and Sandra both mentioned, you know, picking things that will have tangible impacts that people will see. So in our first year, we had 2 major initiatives we wanted to launch. One was the composting, and the second was a community garden. And they were really visible projects. The residents could see the garden. It created this ugly cement patio into this beautiful space that residents enjoyed walking by and watching the garden grow and the crops flourish, and they got the benefit from the produce that was produced. And then the composting, I think, as others have said, you know, residents noticed right away, wow, I'm only putting my trash down the chute once a week now. You know, it's just so obvious that this is a huge impact on our food waste, on our total waste stream when you take out the food scraps. So I think that's my major advice. Start
Great.
small and tangible.
Thank you, Carolyn. Any other pieces of advice that you might want to share, Karen or Sandy?
Sure. I think it's important to make sure your board is aligned with your goals, because residents have all kinds of priorities. It might be the lobby decor, it might be landscaping. So it's challenging unless you really have good board support. And I think the ways in which the board can be supportive is to resist pressure from individual residents. You know, there's always the few. So to be able to sort of control that and move on from that, to stick with previously voted decisions, and to move, as I said, discussions and decisions along in a timely way. Sometimes you can lose out on opportunities like rebates or favorable loan rates from the Montgomery County Green Bank. So it's important to have your board behind you 100%.
Yeah, thank you so much, Karen. We are actually out of time right now, but panelists, if you could stick around to the end, and then if anybody has any questions, they can go ahead and put that into the chat, and then we can ask them later and answer those. So just want to move on and close this out. So with some of the things that we talked about, you know, starting small when you establish a green team, sharing that vision, making sure that everybody has a stake in that, you know, and that you're aligned with what your vision and your goals are, that the residents are at the center of it, that there's ownership, and that if you have residents that are interested in certain initiatives, that you let them own it, you let them take charge of it, and there's more of a sense of responsibility over that too. And then lastly, have fun with it. You can make challenges, you know, on your property. You could do some events, you know, do things to make it fun and exciting to be a part of. So thank you, everybody. And with the next person to speak here is Ruth Carbonell, who is our multifamily recycling program manager.
Thank you, Jessica. Definitely, it's exciting to see how many green initiatives are happening around the county. So thank you again, everybody who is working so hard to keep us as a #1 in Maryland. My presentation is regarding setting and maintaining a mandatory scrap metal recycling program. And I don't know if you knew, but the scrap metal is one of the 5 required materials that must be recycled by multifamily properties. Next, please. So here is an example of a trash room with a container designated for the scrap metal collection. And this janitorial lady was able to give me a tour of her property, and I took this picture back a few years back, but they still have a program. What is a scrap metal? A scrap metal is everything that contains more or 50% or more of metal. So for instance, refrigerators, microwaves, cooking pots and pans, bicycles, grills. You see the list is pretty long. So everything that you guys are they already have in your program, but you are not sure, just make sure it is at least 50% or more metal. That should be in the category of scrap metal. Next. Why to recycle scrap metal? Well, not only because it is a mandatory item to recycle per Executive Regulation 1-15, and it's been around for almost 20 years. So this has been a mandatory required item here in Montgomery County for almost 20 years already. So we treat it the same way as mixed paper, commingle, yard train, or Christmas trees, where you Alan was mentioning earlier. So it's just another item, the same way you will treat mixed paper and commingle, and you will report it to us every year. We're expecting also from property managers to report this to us. Metal is a non-renewable, renewable, and therefore a limited resource that is in a very high demand. If you look around, all the buildings require heavy amounts of metal to start, the foundations of these buildings. I go every time I go to the school that my child is in right now, the elementary school. They are building like a 2 floors next door, adjacent to the older building, and it's all metal. So it's fascinating to see how metal is important. It's a key tool for any of these constructions. So we really want you to think about it and know that we don't want to use natural resources that can be already reused in here. Like you don't want to go and get virgin materials when we can reuse what is already being in a microwave or a toaster or something like that. Do you know that every pound of steel recycled can save energy to power a 60-volt light bulb for more than a day? So like the green team representatives, they were here, they were saying not only by recycling you are reducing the amount of waste, but you're also helping to protect the energy consumption, the water, maintaining the water cleaner. So it's like a cycle, right? It's all connected. So when you do good and recycling, think like you are also helping to create cleaner water, conserve energy, and also help the air to stay, cleaner. Next, please. Best practices to recycle scrap metal. So like I said earlier, all apartments and condominiums are required to have scrap metal recycling programs in place that are accessible to the residents. So this is something that we are expecting from every single property manager. It doesn't matter if you are in a condominium or an apartment, we're expecting you to have a program in place. If you have not started yet, you can definitely contact me or contact Jessica if she has you already established a relationship with her or with Renee Johnson, and we can help you to walk you through the processes to start this program. Ensure that you have a container that is in a large sufficiently to accommodate all these items. If you feel like you just need a larger area because you're getting a lot of bed frames or larger items, you can also have something many people do in a basement or in a loading dock or in any area that you consider is safe for residents to come and dispose of that. These areas need to be identified, clearly identified by residents, so they can go anytime and dispose of. When you're purchasing appliances, please ask if the old appliance can be removed and recycled. When you are conducting also remodeling projects, ensure your contracts are also recycling these metals. Next, please. The best practice here is to establish convenient locations. Like I was telling earlier, everything, like ideally you will have recycling in the trash rooms for scrap metal, but if you don't have room there, you can also have a centralized area for the recycle of these metals. It is also not expected from you to have recycling of this metal every week like you will do in mixed paper of commingle, because we know you're not generating your precedents and you're not generating this as often, but we recommend that you have at least twice a month, once a month, or every other month, or some people may have just on-call collection services. That's acceptable as well. Place recycling containers throughout the property so residents have the ability to recycle the small containers, the small scrap metal items, for instance, like silverware or staplers, items like that they can recycle. If you need smaller containers, we have them available, so we can facilitate them to you for this use as well. Scrap metal storage must be separate from bulk trash storage. So oftentimes we go to our properties and we see that the bulk trash is all mixed with the metal, and this generates confusion as residents may just start mixing literally trash with scrap metal, and we never know if the program is actually happening. So our recommendation is to have everything apart, so you can have a section of that big area labeled and clearly identified for scrap metal and another section for bulk trash. Provide scrap metal recycling collection storage area that is accessible again to residents and large enough. So these two items are important. We want to be a program that is accessible and convenient for all the residents. So for instance, if you have somebody that has mobility issues or limitations, you want to have an area where they can also get in a wheelchair or something like that. Like make sure they have access to your program. Proper signage provides around the clock education. So here, as Alan was mentioning earlier, we have posters, we have labels, we have spent time creating them in a way that people can use them easily just by looking at pictures. So it's more pictures than words. It is in Spanish also for your convenience if you have residents that prefer to read in Spanish. We have also the stickers. We have the stickers actually in two different sizes. One is like a square little sticker, and the other one is longer. That is very useful for outdoor containers. So please ensure custom labeling is available in other languages if you need to. So if you see that your resident maybe speak Mandarin or French, and we can also help you with that. We can also help you to design stuff or to translate if there is a need. Next, please. These are some examples of scrap metal collection areas. So scrap metal is, like I said, it's been required for more than almost 20 years. And here are some pictures of places where we have been and we had seen a successful scrap metal program. Another examples, and the container to your right is one of those slim gyms that we provide, also at no cost. If you need one or two, or we can help you with that as well. So you can locate it in a convenient location where everybody, will dispose of their small scrap metal items. And I believe this is almost the last slide for this presentation. Here are some of the links to our resources. So please do not hesitate to request any of these materials. They're at no cost for you. And we have the brochure that explains how to recycle scrap metal at your condominium. In an apartment condominium, we have the Property Manager's Guide to Recycling, which was revised and finalized last year. So it has very good information. It has as per your request, because we have a lot of managers asking for this. So we added a list of scrap metal collectors, haulers and collectors that are licensed in Montgomery County. So that Property Manager's Guide is a very useful resource for you. The scrap metal recycling decals, as you saw there, are also, can you go back, please? The scrap metal recycling decals, as I show you, as I told you before, the longest one is usually better for the dumpsters. And the poster that is also, like I said, is bilingual in Spanish. Okay, so that was pretty much a reminder for your scrap metal programs. If you have any questions, please type them in the chat and we will discuss about this later. I'm going to start sharing about how to recycle, how to file your 2022 annual waste reduction and recycling report online. And you can give me some thumbs up if you guys see my screen. Everything, you good? All right. So this is the website that most likely you already are familiar with it, our DEP website. And this is the section where you will type on your email address and your password, right? So if you have an email address that you used last year, feel free to reuse it again. And the password, if you have forgotten your password, you can just type on your email address here in the first box. And then you can click on send me my password and the system will automatically send you a password if your email is already linked to the account that you are about to file for. Now, if somebody else did it last year, or you are not sure which email has been used to file online, please feel free to contact me directly. I think that's the easiest way, to my email address, ruth.carbonell@montgomerycountymd.gov. And please let me know that you are needing login information so I can help you with that. So I have it already set up here to start. I already put the password and I am working on this test property, which is Diamond Apartment. So you should be able to see a screen like this when you are in the system ready to file. It's very important to go under account tools and check for the account information. So you want to click on here, make sure everything is how it is supposed to be written. So the name, the street address, the name of the business, everything like that. So because many times the property has changed names in a year or so. So we want to have the latest information. Then if you go here where it says account home, if you go to test, which is the name of the property, in this case it's just a test, you're gonna see, okay, this is the address and everything is good. If you double click again here, you will see more information, like for instance, the property mailing address, or where do you want us to send important information, hard copies of anything. So you want to add this information. So this applies a lot for condominiums, since you oftentimes don't have an on-site property manager. So it's important for us to know where do you want us to mail you any information. Property management information is also very important for us. So if we had to follow up with you, we would need to know the property management information. So here is where you will update that. Okay. So now you go back to, sorry, went back to that. You start your report and you click the business property list on this person is correct to the best of your knowledge, everything is good. So now you want to start your report. Okay, so the system will bring you immediately to the list of required recyclable materials. And like I said earlier, we had said throughout the webinar, there are 5 main items. So it is paper, commingled materials, and other materials, which is scrap metal, Christmas trees, and yard trim. So these are the 5 required items. So mixed paper includes everything. You do not need to choose any of these unless you have cardboard collected apart. If you have a hauler that just collect cardboard pure and clean without any other type of papers, you are free to choose cardboard. But just for this practice, we're gonna assume that everything is going in one container, all type of paper. For commingled materials, the same. So everything is in there, all the aluminum cans, glass bottles, plastic bottles, etc. So you don't have to choose any of this. This is the boxes here is only if you are having like glass bottles in one container, and that's the only thing you are collecting, or plastic bottles apart from the other items. But if you have a container for everything there, you just choose commingled materials. We're gonna choose scrap metal as well, and Christmas trees and yard trim. As we know, they are all required items. We're gonna hit proceed. Now, if you have any voluntarily recyclable items, here is the list of all of them, or at least most of them, that you can choose from. So the most popular ones are batteries. So we're gonna choose, sorry, I don't need to, but we're gonna choose batteries, and we're gonna choose food scraps just because they have become the most popular ones. But you can choose any of these that you are already recycling. And you hit proceed. And now you see you come to a very different screen, which is like already gonna look like the report that I see from my end. So you are at the mixed paper compartment, let's say, and you want to choose the container types. So you have a list of container types here, but if you do not see it, if you do not see the container that you are using, you can always choose other, and you can type here the type of container that you have, right? But for the sake of this training, let's choose a 2 cubic yard dumpster, which is very common. And let's say that you have one container, and this container is collected only once a week. So now the pounds, which is the question, that you may be like, where am I gonna get these pounds? So before you even get to this point where you sign in and when you're gonna start the report, you should have all your information available. And I'm gonna speed up because I know we're gonna run out of time, but before you start, you always wanna know how many, what is the total amount in pounds that you are using. Before that, you always need to contact your hauler, your trash and recycling haulers, your scrap metal hauler, your yard trim landscaper, the person who's dealing with your Christmas trees. So you want to ask them, you want to ask all your vendors for this information prior to signing in, so you don't get frustrated, because I know it's frustrating to start something and you're like, oh, I don't have any of this information. I'm just not gonna do it. I'm gonna let February 1st pass and I'm gonna be late for the report, right? So always ask, please, before even starting, just get to that information before. Now, if you have troubles getting that information from your haulers, we have a resource online that is called the Track Calculator, TRRAC. So because our program's name is Track. So we have the Track Calculator. ready in our website, and you will see with the slides that we have links to the track calculator as well. But just to do it really quick here, I'm going to show you the track calculator that we have created, and it's all based on real information that we can compare to the similar to the information that the haulers will give to you. So for instance, we have here the 2 cubic yard mixed paper dumpster, and we are saying it's collected once a week. So the total yearly amount of pounds is going to be 23 to 44 pounds, right? So I'm just going to type that number here. And this is just for the practice. So what I wanted to show you really quick is that you can use the calculator and just use that as a reference if you couldn't get those amounts from your hauler. So this is approved by us. You can still use it, and it has the list of all the container sizes, the number of containers. You just type the number of containers, the frequency that they are collected, and it will generate the total amount of pounds. Okay, so that's if you are dual streaming. If you were single streaming, meaning you only have a 2 cubic yard container for mixed paper and for recycling, you can also add that here, and you will see the total amount of pounds for mixed paper and the total amount of pounds for commingle. And then this is just the contamination rate. I know I'm going pretty fast, and you probably are gonna still have questions after I'm done, but we have a recording that we did in December 7th, which is, we did a webinar just for annual recycling reporting. So that one, you can also visit that if you still have questions after I'm done here. You want to add the hauler's name. So you just click where it says add the hauler, and you want to type of the hauler name. So for this practice, we're gonna just say you have Waste Management. And that's it. I'm gonna pretend you're done with mixed paper, but if you have a different type of container for mixed paper, you can just add here and do exactly the same as I did, and you will have the next type of container. For commingle, if we go to commingle, we're gonna do exactly the same steps. We're gonna make the same steps. Let's say you also have here a 1 container that was collected once a week, and we're gonna just type here on some numbers for the practice. So exactly the same thing. You're gonna add the hauler's name. It's very important for us to know who is your hauler, because that's one of the most common mistakes that we receive. Reports missing the hauler's name or reports missing the amount of pounds. That's some of the very common mistakes. Now for the scrap metal, I know it can get tricky as you may not have the total amount of pounds, but what we suggest is if you don't have that, you can give us a list of items. So let's say you have 2 refrigerators, and you have 3 stoves and 2 microwaves, something like that. You can give us the list of items, and you can say here, for instance, for example, you can say 1 container or even 0 containers if it's just like a big area where you're keeping everything there. Oftentimes you can just choose on call if you're doing it like only on call, and it maybe is once a month. So you can type here 12. And for the amount of pounds, if you don't know it, we have tables that we can use to convert this list into pounds. Okay, so that's acceptable for scrap metal. Now, if you already have your contractor gave you the total amount of pounds they collected, it's okay. Then that way you just add here the number of total pounds, which, let's say it was 4,000. Okay, and then you add the hauler name. You have the ability also to self-haul and bring it to our facility. But for this practice, we're gonna choose turbo haul, which is a very common one. Saying you go to Christmas trees, and let's say you have other, because for Christmas trees, you may just have a collection area. So you can type on other main collection area, for instance. All right. And number of containers, let's say we don't have any because it doesn't apply. Pickups is once a year, since Christmas trees only happen once a year. Now, if you didn't have any of these, you can also leave this in blank and tell us 0. Let's say you didn't have anything, you had the area, but nobody's using Christmas trees for some reason, you can put 0. That's fine too. Or you can also, if your property does not allow Christmas trees, which is also a very common situation, you can type, we ask you to type it in under waste reduction, a description of what's happening with your Christmas trees. So for instance, our property does not allow Christmas trees. That will be a good statement for us just to know, so we don't have to ask you this again when we do the verification process. So all these reports go through a verification process, and Jessica and Renee, they will go and check your properties to see that everything that is here is actually accurate, and will offer additional consultation information for you guys to report if there is a need. So we're gonna pretend that these Christmas trees are collected by Green Garden Landscaping. So there it is. You are done with your Christmas trees. Same goes for yard trim. Exactly the same thing. You go and choose from here. Let's say you're grass cycling, and so there are no number of containers. Since grass cycling, you're just leaving the grass and clippings on the ground. So it is monthly, and let's say it's once a month. So you just want to choose what is happening in your property. I'm just doing this very quick so you have an idea of how it's going to get done, but you are actually going to have the numbers, because each property is different. With the grass cycling, so since it's already staying in your property, you can just type here grass cycling. And I believe it should come on. Okay. Also for grass cycling, if you go back to our track calculator, so we have also estimates, conversion estimates here for stuff like that, like yard trim. So if you have the number of acreages, you can say, okay, it's 1 acre that is being grass cycled. So it will give you 15,200 pounds, for instance. So if you give us the name of acreages or square footage, we can also do that for you, or you can also use this recycling and trash calculator. Okay, so this one also has information about food scraps if you are wondering how to calculate the food scraps. All right. All right, let's go back to our report. So you already did the 5 required items, but now you would like to go and tell us that you are also doing some additional items. You're recycling also batteries. So let's say you had just 1 bucket for batteries. It's collected once a year, since they don't generate as much in this property. And let's say they just got 200 pounds last year. Okay. So then it's exactly the same. You just add the collector, and we're just gonna choose. We're gonna choose this just for the sake of the presentation today. Food scraps, same thing. You go and choose the container. So let's say you have 1 60-gallon container, and it's collected once a week. So you already have your food scraps program in place. You need to ask your contractor, whoever is collecting, how many pounds were collected in 2022, but you can also compare with our trash calculator. Okay, so let's say you're using here just to choose somebody. Let's say veteran compost. All right, so you're pretty much done. You're gonna do the same for trash, and we're not gonna do it because of the time. We're running out of time, but it's exactly the same process for trash. And you're gonna choose your container size, your container frequency times, and the amount of trash pounds. For waste reduction, here is in this box, you want to type what is your property doing to increase recycling and waste reduction. Anything that you are doing to improve, like you are doing yard sales, you are reducing paper in the office, stuff like that. Education, you want to also click here from what is that you guys are doing. If you are doing outreach with us, or if you are doing outreach by yourself, how many times a year, all that stuff. So it's very important for us, all this outreach information, as we usually go through this when we are selecting the award winners every year. So when we are selecting who's gonna be recognized every year for their outstanding efforts in recycling, we always go through this. And we verify also, but we always start from here. So the report details, let's say this property had 120 units and it has 2 acres, and you saved it here. And now you want to see a preview of this report. So as you see, it's pretty much done. I skipped the trash section because of the time, but it's gonna be exactly the same process. And then you submit your report. So of course, not letting me submit because I didn't do trash, but I'm gonna add something really quick here. So we have 2 cubic yards, and we're gonna do it once a week because for sake of time. Okay. And we're gonna pretend J&J is collecting. Here it comes. Okay. Let's keep waste management there. All right. So we have our trash there. So now when you're gonna submit, okay. It's gonna ask you to type on something before you submit. So you have to actually give us your information about outreach and waste reduction before it's gonna move on. So I selected that you have been doing outreach with both of us, by yourself, and also with the team from track. And you have completed your report. So this is the moment where you signed. Property owner, so I'm gonna pretend I am the property owner. Or other responsible party. So if you are the system manager, you can also do it. Or if you are the maintenance supervisor or anybody who has the responsible, is responsible for this report. Okay, so here it is. That's how you report your annual recycling report for us. Okay, I'm gonna pass it on to Jessica now. Jessica is in charge of moderating today the questions, so I'm not keeping up with the question. Not sure if there are many. Thank you, Jessica.
Thanks. All right, so we do have a few questions, and some of these are things that I think we could just answer quickly in the essence of time because we only have a few minutes left. First up, there was a few questions about, will this be recorded? Will you be able to have access to this webinar later? The answer is yes, you will. We will be, I believe we'll be sending it out via email, and we'll also have it on our website, so you can access it in both places. Now, if you are here for the annual recycling report and you need to refer to that information, I did put our December 7th webinar in the chat. Follow that link, and that goes much more in depth about filing the annual recycling report, using the track calculator, etc. So if you need, that resource to finish up your report, go ahead and you could use that past webinar for it. Let's see what else we've got. Oh, and this isn't a question. Somebody just made this point. For single stream acceptance, try to visit the recycling center in Durwood where people can see the recycling process. You can actually schedule a tour through our website from that. I believe Ellen had put that link in the chat as well. Somebody here is asking a question. I'm not sure who to direct this one to, but where is the drop off for durable medical equipment?
Hey, Jessica, I can go ahead and quickly take that one. We do have the drop off at our Shady Grove Processing Facility transfer station on the public drop off area. I included a link to the durable medical equipment reuse program in the chat. And if you have any further questions, you can just reach out to Ruth, Jessica, or myself. We'll have the email sent out to everyone, and you can follow us if you have any specific questions later.
Great. Someone is asking to know who hauls clean cardboard. They haven't found anyone.
Yeah, Jessica, I went ahead, also included in the link in the chat feature, a link to our resource listing. So we have a listing of recycling collection companies, reuse companies that will provide different services. It's not a comprehensive listing. It's a listing of companies that we're aware of. It's not the county's endorsement of any of those companies listing, but you can click on that link in the chat and it'll give you, take you right to our resource listing of different companies.
Thanks, Alan. And then I see one more question here. Someone is looking to purchase front-loading compactors. Does anyone have any experience with this and can suggest a vendor?
Yeah, you can also refer to our resource listing as well in terms of containers.
Great. And that's it for questions. I haven't seen any others.
Okay, thank you, Jessica. And I want to thank everybody here in this meeting. Thank you, Karen, Sandy, Caroline, for being our guests today. We had learned a lot from your communities. That was really exciting. Thank you, Eileen. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Jessica, for all your support throughout the webinar. Thank you, everybody who has attended here. And we would love for you to participate in our survey. It's just 5 quick questions. If you can participate, it's right here. It should be in front of you. The first question is, do you learn anything new today? Anything about which you did not have a prior understanding? Yes, no. Second question is, as a result of the information provided during the webinar, are you considering making changes to increase the waste reduction and recycling efforts at your multifamily property? Yes, no. Would you like to learn more information about any of the following topics? So we have recycling of required recyclable materials, recycling voluntary recyclable materials, learning how to implement food scraps recycling programs, forming or supporting green team committees, annual reporting requirements. Number 4, will you consider attending an in-person seminar this year? Yes, no, no preference. Okay. And number 5, do you use social media to share information about your properties? It keeps going up. Efforts to reduce, reuse, and recycle? Yes or no? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for participating. And please stay tuned as we are going to have an in-person seminar coming up this year. So we will let you know the details soon. Thank you again for participating.